Welcome back to Hannity. The world-renowned brain surgeon Dr. Benjamin Carson made headlines last month at the National Prayer Breakfast when he dared to speak truth to power about where we stand as a nation. He's back with us now to weigh in on how the president's failed leadership has now brought us to the point where we are facing tonight this sequester apocalyptic deadline at midnight tonight Eastern. Joining us now once again, the author of America the Beautiful, Dr. Benjamin Carson. Sir, got a lot of positive response to you being on the program, Doctor. It's great to see you again. Thank you for being back.
It's been amazing, the response that I've gotten, and people are just anxious to hear something that makes sense.
You know, you addressed in that prayer breakfast, you know, we now have $16 trillion in debt. We're trying to cut, this year would be a $44 billion cut of $3.78 trillion. And the president is scaring the living daylights out of the country. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's pretty amazing that anybody would actually buy that. And I'm hoping that we can bring the educational level of the populace up to a point where they know a little bit about math and they recognize that that's such a small percentage, and of course it's not going to change anything. But what's even more draconian is the fact that you're not looking at the places where it can hurt the least. You're looking at the places where it can hurt the most, and that doesn't make any sense. And it would be so easy to simply say, if we want to get things under control economically, let's cut everything. And let's do it proportionately. There we come back to that word again. That way, you don't have the left, you know, protecting their little goodies, and you don't have the right protecting their little goodies. Everybody gets cut equally, but you leave the directors of the departments the discretion to cut because they know where the fat is.
You know, Connie Mack was a congressman from Florida, and this is the plan I support, so we stop generational theft. The Mack penny plan. You cut 1 penny out of every dollar. We keep the budget where it was last year, cut 1 penny out of every dollar, across the board, everything. And you do that for 6 years and we balance the budget.
And that makes a lot of sense, and 6 years goes by very quickly. Yeah. But that, because it makes so much sense, that's why it's not being paid attention to.
That's sad. You know, what do you think, though? I mean, everything was thrown on the table this week. I mean, I'll go through the list. You've heard it. Meat cleaver approach, military readiness, early education, energy, medical, border patrol, FBI, criminals. The president said this week that you want to cut poor kids or do you want to cut from disabled kids? And I think it's unfair that he's using this as almost like a weapon. Yes. And yet he doesn't deal with the fact that we're breaking open these kids' piggy banks. Does that bother you as much as it does me?
Well, the demagoguery is almost laughable if it weren't so tragic. And I'm actually hopeful that at some point the mainstream media will, you know, stop going along willingly with it, because that's why, you know, he's emboldened to do these things, because he knows they're not going to call him on it. But, you know, some of the recent revelations with Bob Woodward and some others may give him pause.
What did you think of the Bob Woodward issue this week? And it wasn't just Bob. There were a number of other people that came out and said, yeah, I kind of got intimidated too.
Well, it didn't surprise me because, you know, I've seen some things behind the scenes myself. And I just hope we get more people looking at this critically.
All right, I want to ask you a question about your speech, something that went on behind the scenes when we get back. We'll continue more with Dr. Carson. Common sense solutions, that's what America needs when we return. Welcome back to Hannity. We continue with Dr. Ben Carson. So you give this speech before the president was in the room, National Prayer Breakfast. It gets all of this publicity. And then we discover the White House wanted a copy of your speech, and they kept kind of haranguing you a little bit to get a copy of that? What happened?
Well, that happened the last time that I was going to speak also. And, you know, I just simply told them that, you know, I don't have a copy of the speech because, you know, I don't speak from a script. You know, I don't use a teleprompter. You know, I'm a spontaneous speaker. And, you know, before I went to that prayer breakfast, I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to say.
Yeah, so extemporaneous, and you tell your story. Did you sense in any way that they were afraid because they knew maybe where you might be going and you didn't fully, completely agree with the president? Did you sense that they were trying to tell you, hey, the president's here, don't say anything that might offend them?
It was more than an implication. I actually was asked to not offend the president. And I don't think the president should have been offended if the things that I was saying didn't necessarily apply to him. You know, if the shoe fits, wear it, and then be offended. But if it doesn't fit, then you have nothing to be offended about.
You mean somebody told you directly not to offend the president?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you know who it was? Do you want to share that?
I probably would not be wise to share that for that person's sake.
You know, Dr. Carson, you're just a man of common sense, and I know that your message is resonating with a lot of people. I could listen to you all night. One of the things that I try to teach my kids, I got a 14-year-old and 11-year-old, is to take responsibility for their decisions, their actions in life. You talk a lot about your mom. I want to play the president in a list of blame. He seems to always blame a lot of people for things when they go wrong, and I want to ask you about this after you see this.
Okay.
We were inheriting so many challenges. We knew this was going to take time because we've got this big, messy, tough democracy. One of the main reasons our economy faltered was because some on Wall Street made irresponsible bets. We've lost our ambition, our imagination. We've weathered the Arab Spring's effect on oil and gas prices, the Japanese earthquake and tsunami's effect on supply chains, the extraordinary economic uncertainty in Europe, and recently markets around the globe have taken a bumpy ride.
There are some structural issues with our economy where a lot of businesses have learned to become much more efficient with a lot fewer workers. You see it when you go to a bank and you use an ATM. You don't go to a bank teller. Or you go to the airport and you're using a kiosk instead of checking in at the gate.
But, you know, we've been a little bit lazy, I think, over the last couple of decades.
And I could go on for an hour, and now he's saying that the Republicans, if things go bad, now it's their fault because of the sequester, because they're trying to stop borrowing money. What is your reaction to people when they don't accept blame?
Well, for one thing, I would say to the American people, whoever is saying something, be they a Democrat or Republican, if they start out by saying the other party, tune them out, because they're excuse makers. The reason that we have brains is so that we can figure out how to do things. My mother used to always say when we came up with an excuse, do you have a brain? And if the answer was yes, then you could have thought your way out of it. And if you always have excuses, then you can simply wallow in the excuse and you don't really have to do anything. And it's not conducive to success in any arena.
You're a very smart man. You're obviously very well versed in politics. Now, just a little analysis. Why do you think the president plays politics this way? What is your analysis? What is your take on it?
My take is that he comes from the background of a community organizer. What do community organizers do? They do the this against them type of situation, and he's very good at that. He's an expert at it. But I'm not sure that that works very well when you're trying to lead a whole nation as opposed to a community.
What do you think as we go into this sequester just now, a little less than 2 hours away, a little more than 2 hours away, and all the doom and gloom and predictions? Is it a good thing that we're finally cutting some of the money from the government when we have all this debt?
Well, it's better that we cut something with this scenario of doom and gloom than that we continue to increase the debt and to destroy the possibilities for a bright future for our progeny.
All right, Doctor, it's always a pleasure. I know our audience is very fond of you. We enjoyed doing the hour with you a couple of weeks ago. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.